Mr. Speaker.
Order. Questions for oral answer. Mr. Seah Chuan.
For their interest in how we support our Team Singapore athletes. With Mr. Speaker's permission, may I take both questions 1 and 2 together?
Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the government has established a comprehensive approach to identify, nurture, and develop Team Singapore athletes. There are 2 key overarching strategies in this approach. The first is to provide a broad-based, accessible programming and continually enhance sporting infrastructure to give every Singaporean the opportunity to pursue and perform to the best of their ability, their sporting interests, hone, develop their skills. The second is to provide holistic but individualized, personalized support to talented athletes so that they can maximize their own potential and seek to represent Singapore at elite competitions like the major games. Sir, please allow me to elaborate on both these strategies. To make sports accessible to all Singaporeans, the government devotes significant resources on mass participation programs and courses. This includes Sports Singapore, Active SG, academies and clubs, which offer a more structured way for Singaporeans to pursue their sporting interests and develop their skills. MCCY and Sports Singapore also work closely with MOE schools, the People's Association, and the private sports academies to develop, to coordinate, and also implement across-the-board sports programs that allow young Singaporeans to experience sports and hone their skills and talents. This itself also helps to grow the base of available talent. The National Sports Associations, the NSAs, also play a key role in providing exposure and training opportunities to young Singaporeans. Our efforts extend beyond mass programming. It is also essential that there is a quality infrastructure to enable Singaporeans to engage meaningfully in sports. Over the last 3 years, we have invested an average of almost $90 million each year to develop and operate stadiums, running tracks, sports halls, pools, and other venues that are accessible to the general public. This strategy not only allows us to foster a strong, broad-based sporting culture in Singapore, but also provides opportunities to spot young talents who can be offered pathways to develop their skills and potentially represent our country as national athletes, as Member Seah Chuan had asked about. So over the years, the government has also developed the High-Performance Sport, or HPS, system, which is designed to nurture each high-performance athlete, maximizing his or her own potential. The HPS is administered by the Singapore Sport Institute, or SSI, and the National Youth Sport Institute, or NYSI. The HPS system provides athletes with end-to-end support and development. The system assists each athlete in a holistic and personalized way, as I've mentioned. And we're able to go down to specific physical attributes, strengths, and potential of each individual athlete, as well as determine the demands and requirements of their own respective sport to maximize performance outcomes. Central to this approach is the development of a daily training environment for each athlete, under which they are given a range of support and guidance in areas such as sports science and sports medicine, coaching, counseling. All of these are part of the HPS system. For example, SSI and NYSI employ leading-edge technology to test, monitor, and track performance, setting achievement milestones relevant for the individual to challenge each athlete to meet his or her own full potential. Let me illustrate how the HPS system has supported our champion para-swimmer, Yip Ping Siu. So I will use examples in the course of this answer to support and explain some of the points I make. But really, these examples serve as illustrations because no 2 sports, and indeed no 2 individual athletes, are similar. And the HPS system is designed to be curated to bring out the best in each individual athlete. But in Ping Siu's case, sports biomechanists at the SSI record and analyze her swim timings and performances rigorously. They also work closely with her coach and performance director to adjust and make fine adjustments and optimize her strokes. For Pinsu's SSI sports physiologist performs regular tests to monitor her own body conditions and provide feedback to her coach on calibrating the volume, frequency, and also intensity of her training. At the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games, for instance, the SSI sport physiologist employed various forms of heat retention to regulate Pinsu's body temperature while she was in the holding room awaiting her event, and this helps her to maximize her performance outcomes at the races. Taken together, SSI's support for Pinsu and many other athletes have helped to boost their competition performances. The HPS system supports all our elite athletes by recognizing each athlete as a unique individual with specific gifts and abilities. The government invests in the system and continually enhances it so that our athletes will be supported and best developed in a way that addresses their own individual needs and potential. The focus is on enabling each athlete to be at their best, to do their best, and to succeed against the best in their chosen sport. Integral to this system is the provision of excellent coaching for our elite athletes, a point which member Polisan asked about. The government extends substantial grants to the NSAs to enable them to hire selected coaches to train our elite athletes. Additionally, SSI's sports scientists, specialists, and experts work closely with many of these coaches to better integrate them into each athlete's daily training environment. We endeavor, of course, to identify and hire the best coaches for our athletes, foreign or local, and sometimes a blend, so that our own coaching environment can also benefit from foreign expertise. So, for example, one of Team Singapore's fencing coaches is Joseph David Engert, who was a former top German national youth fencer and two-time World Cup junior champion. Together with our own local coach, Henry Koh, who was himself a double bronze medalist at the 2003 SEA Games, they recently led two of our fencers, Amita Bhatia and Kiria Tikana, to their maiden Olympic Games in Tokyo. There's also local coach Pang Ching Liang, who guided national para-archer Shaida Alim to her first World Championship title in 2019, an unprecedented feat for a Singaporean. Shaida has also maintained her top 3 world rankings to date over this period of time. For his efforts, Ching Liang won a Singapore Disability Sports Award for Best High Performance Coach in 2020. So top coaches are in demand all over the world, and many talented expatriate coaches rarely remain with one team or in one country for long. Therefore, in hiring top foreign coaches for our athletes, we also want them to transfer their know-how, skills, and expertise to Singaporean coaches so that we can grow our own pool of talented local coaches. For example, Mulyo Handoyo, many are probably familiar with this name. He had coached several international badminton champions, including former Olympic champion Taufik Hidayat, as well as guided our very own Ronald Susilo to a career-high world ranking of 6. While he will step down soon as our national badminton singles head coach after a successful 4-year stint to spend more time with his family after being away for an extended period of time due to COVID-19, he will leave behind a mentoring legacy which impacts not just our players, but also our own local coaching pool. And one of them is badminton coach Kelvin Ho. Kelvin is himself a former national athlete who won a bronze at the 2009 SEA Games before retiring from competition a year later. He has since honed his own coaching skill, using his own experience as a top-class shuttler and also benefiting from the experience of Coach Mulyo. Many members in this house would have been familiar with the role which Kelvin played in guiding Loh Kian Yew and other shuttlers to their recent successes on the court. There are many other notable local coaches like Ching Liang and Kelvin within the Team Singapore fraternity. Recently, ex-national swimmer Gary Tan was named as a successor national swimming coach, replacing Australian Stephen Widmer. Gary learned his craft under Widmer and his predecessor, Sergio Lopez, and I'm confident that Gary will continue in the fine traditions of our Singapore swimming sporting culture. So in total, the government invests about 70 million in this HPS system each year, every year. Over the last 5 years, these investments have paid for many of the initiatives and efforts I've just described. These include purchasing and operating new technological systems to support SSI's sports science facilities, funding the cost of coaches and training programs, both local as well as overseas, providing world-class facilities to allow elite athletes to train in the most optimal conditions possible, and undertaking research and development to offer new and innovative forms of support to our athletes, Let me just share two recent examples of these initiatives. Several years ago, the SSI established an environmental chamber in which factors such as temperature, humidity, wind, and altitude can be closely controlled, calibrated. This chamber allows SSI's sports scientists to monitor the effects of these variables on the performance of each athlete and calibrate their training accordingly. This, in turn, allows our athletes to acclimatize, to get used to factors such as altitude and temperature, to get used to their training environment for competition. Second example, when the Badminton World Federation announced that it will be switching to synthetic feather shuttlecocks for environmental reasons, the SSI's sport biomechanics team conducted an intensive comparative study of the flight and projection characteristics of the new shuttlecocks and how each of our individual Team Singapore badminton players performed with them. And this study resulted in valuable customized guidance to each player on how he or she can modify his or her movements to adapt to the speed and flight of the new shuttlecocks. These are some of the examples of the intrinsic support which we provide to Team Singapore athletes through the HPS system. In the coming years, we will commit to a high level of funding to the HPS system because we believe this will enable us to continue enhancing the system, especially in areas that will maximize individual performance of our athletes. So besides funding HPS at the systems level, at the broad infrastructure systems level, a significant portion of funding also goes to supporting our athletes directly. For example, there is the SPECS scholarship, which is offered to the most promising athletes to excel, to allow them to excel at major games, and who can then serve themselves as role models for young Singaporeans. The scholarship provides a monthly stipend that allows athletes to take care of their daily expenses. There's also funding to help offset their coaching costs, participate in local and overseas training and competitions, purchase equipment, and obtain additional sports medicine or sports science support if they require it. There's, of course, a range in the amount of the financial support available, with our top athletes supported at several $1,000s per month for those who can excel at the highest level of their sport. The SPECS scholarship has been given to 168 able-bodied and para-athletes since its establishment in 2013. There are currently, at this point in time, 76 scholarship holders coming from a diverse cross-section of sports. Several of them have won medals at the major games and the World Championship level, and a handful like Pin Siu and Ken Yu are household names amongst Singaporeans. But, sir, the government's support for our elite athletes is not just a matter of dollars and cents, not just financial support. It's not just about coaching, and not only about the technical or sports science support. It also extends to many other aspects of our athletes' lives, enables them to compete in sports whilst excelling as students, as professionals, and also as exemplary members of society. And we recognize that each athlete will face different challenges outside of the sporting arena at different stages of their own lives. And the SPECS framework addresses these needs. It comprises several schemes to help athletes at various stages and across various facets of their lives so that they can thrive in both sporting as well as non-sporting environments. In the interest of time, let me just briefly describe these initiatives. The SPECS education scheme was set up in 2013 to help athletes meet the demands of juggling both sports and education. I think it's a question that many parents, many athletes themselves ask, how do we do both well at the same time? The scheme assists student athletes to balance their sporting and academic pursuits by supporting them with school admissions, scholarships, and also importantly, scheduling their day-to-day classes and exams around their training sessions and competitions. This scheme has been made possible through agreements between SportSG and 16 partner institutions of higher learning, IHLs, including the ITEs, Polytechnics, NUS, and SMU. More than 500 student athletes have benefited from this scheme. One of them is national shooter Martina Veloso, who has won 2 Commonwealth Games gold medals and a gold at the International Shooting Sport Federation World Cup in 2014. Martina, a graduate of Nanyang Polytechnic, is a beneficiary of the SPECS education scheme. The Polytechnic itself is a strong supporter and partner of the scheme. It has proactively assisted Martina in managing her class and examination schedule, granted her extensions for the submission of assignments, offered her a customized path of study that accommodated her own training and also travel and competition commitments. There's also the SPECS Business Network to help athletes who are stepping into the workforce secure jobs and pursue meaningful careers whilst at the same time balancing their own sporting commitments. The scheme also provides support to those who are retiring from active competition and training in their transition to full-time work. The network currently comprises more than 60 companies and organizations across more than 25 industries. These provide a wide array of career opportunities to Team Singapore athletes, and they include Deloitte, Adidas, we have BCA from the government sector, and OCBC Bank, to name a few. Since 2013, 330 former and current athletes have been assisted through the scheme. Take Sophie Soon, for example, our national para-swimmer. She's one such beneficiary. Sophie started her internship at Toyota Motors Asia Pacific, who is a sports business partner. That happened in 2019. The company supported Sophie's rigorous preparation for the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games by offering her a flexible work schedule. Sophie has proven herself as both a top athlete and a model working professional. She finished 4th in her breaststroke final at the Games and was hired as a full-time staff with Toyota after she graduated from Polytechnic. Besides Sophie, other athletes have also benefited from the Specs Business Scheme, and that includes badminton player Jesslyn Hui, taekwondo exponent Chelsea Sim, wushu exponent Ho Lin Yong, and synchronized swimmer Mia Yong. These programs help them to train, balance the commitments of working professional life, allowing them to do both meaningfully. Next, the Specs framework also offers direct monetary grants. These include Specs GLOW, GLOW, or Grant for Loss of Wages, which offsets any lost wages sustained from missing work either through preparation or competition at major games. There's also Specs TAG, TAG, or Training Assistance Grant, which helps to defray athletes' training costs. In the last 5 years, some 4,000 athletes have used these grants to pursue their sporting ambitions. Apart from the Specs schemes which I've just outlined, SSI and NYSI commit time, effort, and attention to promote the well-being of each athlete through his or her own sporting journey. Under the Athlete Life Management Framework, the SSI and NYSI focus on integrating sports performance with interventions to promote mental well-being and stress management. Since 2020, Sports Singapore has also engaged athletes to identify possible symptoms of psychological and mental distress, including eating and sleeping disorders. The HPS system recognizes that athletic performance at the elite level can experience unpredictable peaks and troughs, and progression is rarely linear or predictable. The competitive sport environment is one that can exert and can impart immense stress and pressure on even the most resilient of our athletes. So, Mr. Speaker, beyond just having the best training methods, employing cutting-edge technology and science, and giving financial support, the one other key success factor for us has been our talent, our people talent, the team behind Team Singapore. We have officers at the SSI and NYSI who are prepared to and often go beyond the call of duty, and they become friends, counselors, mentors, and a source of personal support to our athletes. This personal, dedicated approach is a key feature of the care given to each athlete in the HPS system. And one excellent example is Muhammad Hidayat Osman, a strength and conditioning specialist at NYSI. Hidayat works with our young wrestlers on such areas such as their strength, their explosiveness, and their flexibility. Hidayat is a former wrestler himself, and he noticed that there were limited wrestling opportunities for athletes to improve their skills. He therefore volunteered his own time as a sparring partner for young wrestlers so that they have more avenues and opportunities to train. He also embarked on a coaching course in wrestling so that he can better understand the needs of wrestlers through a combined lens of sports science, strength development, and skills training to do more, further, wider support for the athletes under his care. So the government's support for our national athletes is therefore holistic and comprehensive, rendered in an all-round approach. We invest in both the system and we also invest in our individual athletes. Additionally, we directly support athletes from the moment they are identified as a budding talent, through their development and growth as an elite athlete, and in many cases, even as they transition away from active competition. We also work with key stakeholders in the sporting ecosystem. For example, the NSAs, which I've mentioned, play a key role in this environment. They not only help to identify future champions, but also support and coordinate their training and competition schedules. Some actively seek sponsorships and endorsements to finance the career and aspirations of their athletes. Others provide performance-based incentives to them. The government enjoys a collaborative and constructive relationship with many of the associations, and we will continue to work with them and support them as they seek to achieve the best outcomes for our athletes. There's also the Singapore Sports School, which I would like to mention. This was established in 2004. It offers an integrated sports and academic program for secondary and post-secondary students. The sports school offers its students comprehensive training in a variety of sports in an environment that also allows them to excel in their academic pursuits. The school has produced Team Singapore Olympians like Ken Yu, sprinter Kelvin Kang, and swimmer Tao Li. Earlier this month, the school announced its students' results in last year's O and N levels and IB examinations. I was pleased to learn that the students did very well and congratulate the school for its fine work in nurturing student athletes. It shows that we have a system that can deliver outstanding athletes with fine academic record as well. An example of a sportsman who has benefited from this multi-stakeholder, multifaceted approach to sporting and developing athletes is Isaac Kwek. He is currently one of the world's top-ranked youth table tennis players. Isaac was first identified by the Singapore Table Tennis Association at age 7 when he was in SDTA's Bishan Zone Training Centre. He then enrolled at a sports school and joined the National Junior Development Squad and Youth Training Squad, training under head coach Jing Jun Hong. Today, Isaac competes regularly on the world stage, whilst at the same time pursuing his sports school studies and achieving excellent results in both of them. Apart from these organizations, corporates and fellow Singaporeans can also play a role in supporting our national athletes. In 2017, the government recognized this and launched the One Team Singapore Fund, which is a matching grant framework to catalyze and encourage support of private organizations and corporations and members of our public for our national athletes. Donations to the One Team Singapore Fund are directed towards supporting athletes in areas such as enhancing their training environment and increasing their own competition opportunities. They benefit all athletes, regardless of whether they win at competitions or not. So the support is consistent and the framework ensures this. This provides athletes with certainty that they will be given support to achieve their best, regardless of the outcomes, and not just have to rely on prize money. To date, the government has matched more than $15 million of donations from the public since 2017, of which in half that period, as members will know, is the COVID pandemic period. All of these funds go directly to benefiting the sporting infrastructure and to our athletes. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, we know that Singaporeans cheer and celebrate our athletes' achievements as a community of enthusiastic spectators, sports fans, passionate fans, and proud Singaporeans. There are very few things that can motivate, galvanize, and inspire in the way sports can. Singaporeans were top of the podium on the world stage several times last year. Each occasion was an inspiration, bringing our community together, fostering a deep sense of national pride. By the same token, even in defeat, as our football lions have shown us at the recent Suzuki Cup, sports can also inspire. We all rallied behind our team, who fought hard, played with pride, and even though they lost their match, they won our hearts. And this is what sports can do. Each moment of sporting success, special, uplifting, uniting us all. The government will therefore remain committed to sports in Singapore. We will keep our sports facilities, programs, and activities open and accessible to every Singaporean to promote a strong sporting culture and develop a pipeline of strong sporting talent. We will support every one of our national athletes with the assistance and resources they need to excel at the elite level and emerge as national champions and world beaters on the best arenas and the world stages possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Xiao Chen.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister for laying out in his response the really comprehensive framework of support and the system that we have in place to support our national athletes. And I'd just like to acknowledge that this system has been built up and put in place over many years. And indeed, looking at the recent news coming out from a neighboring country, where the funding for their National Sporting Council was severely cut because of COVID-19 and with severe and direct impact to many of their national athletes. I think it lends perspective to the framework of support that we have in place for our athletes. Nonetheless, I think there's always room to do more, and in that respect, I have two questions for the Minister. The first one, of course, inspired by Loh Kin Yew's historic win recently. I'd like to ask if the Minister could share more information on how the government plans to continue supporting world champions like Kin Yew to continue performing and excelling and winning at the highest levels. The second question, more directly, I understand that Kin Yew did not win any prize money from his recent championship. But in the case of athletes who do win prize money, are they allowed to keep this money, or are they expected to contribute some part of it to the government? Thank you.
I thank Mr. Seah for the question. I'll deal with both. I think the first question really, I would have 2 or 3 points to make. First, it is imperative on us to continue to invest in the whole system, because by doing so, providing holistic support, ensuring that the base is grown, then the possibility of more Ken Yews, more Shainas, more Aloysiuses, who are all world number 1 last year, will continue to be not just an aspiration, but a reality. So we have to expand our base, build up better sporting infrastructure, talent sporting, talent development, nurturing, bringing them through the system, and ensuring that these trailblazers that Mr. Seah has mentioned will continue to inspire future generations of sportsmen for Singapore. Our HPS framework, which I've taken some pains to lay out in some detail, allows us to insulate our athletes from the vicissitudes of just prize money, some high, some low, some competitions don't provide prize money, but provides a constant stream of support and ensures that it's both targeted, focused, as well as personalized for each individual athlete. On the prize money, which Mr. Seah has mentioned, this is up to the organizers of each competition. Some provide prize money, others, like the recent World Championships, you play for prestige and, of course, ranking points. Ranking points allow you to rise up in world rankings and allow you to be seeded in subsequent competitions, thereby improving and enhancing chances of progressing further in the competition. All of this, whether prize money or otherwise, and the amount is determined by organizers. But I want to assure Mr. Seah that the government retains no part of this prize money. It is between the athlete and the relevant NSA. They deal with the prize money, they decide how that's best applied, and the government does not retain any portion of this. On the contrary, regardless of whether they succeed at the competitions or otherwise, as I mentioned, the government continues to support the athletes on his or her own journey, and also continues to support private donations, private sponsorships through the One Team Singapore SG Fund, which I mentioned earlier.
Ms. Polisan.
Thank you, Minister. I have a question on safety net for the athletes. To compete at the top-class international level, our athletes will have to give their best in training and in competitions. They have to make many sacrifices, including taking time off from work and from their studies. And in many cases, it will come to a make it or break it point as they go full-time for many years. So what are the safety nets arrangements that our country can offer these national athletes who have taken personal sacrifices to pursue excellence in their sport after they retire from competitive sports? And that will assure athletes and their parents, if they decide to go full-time, to pursue sporting excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Po. I agree with the sentiment that the member has expressed. We do need to ensure that our athletes are single-minded, focused, and put all their energies and devote their time and mental focus on training and eventually also on competition. And so the SPECS program that I mentioned, from scholarship to education to business to Glow and Tech, they provide a range of support to ensure that it is curated. As I said earlier, each athlete is at a different station of his or her own life. Some are students and studying, some are trying to ensure that they get a place in the workforce, some come out of school, and yet others want to retain an interest in the sport that they so deeply and passionately care about. So we do want to try and ensure that through all of these SPECS programs at different parts of the athlete's life, they are supported in a way which allows them to focus on their training. For the safety net that Ms. Poh mentioned, it's also important. And so to that extent, in some cases, athletes transition from a playing career, a competition career, to a coaching career. I mentioned Coach Kelvin and Coach Henry Koh earlier. Those are two examples. They were top-tier athletes in their time, and they transition, and we allow them to transition into coaching, and Sport SG plays a role in this. Broadly speaking, we also want to ensure that we take advantage of and leverage on the expertise of these athletes, so they can find a post-competition career in sports science, in nutrition, in training, in physiotherapy, in physiology. All of these are adjunct to the sporting career, and we will take opportunities as much as we can to continue to develop these adjunct areas so that the sportsmen, the athletes themselves, can continue to serve in that capacity and at the same time still find a career after their playing days are over. We agree with Ms. Poh that we have come quite far on the HPS framework. We have also looked at the environment, working with private stakeholders like in sports SPECS business, but we agree that more can be done, and we will certainly press on with ensuring that athletes remain single-minded, focused on training, and ensuring that they devote as much of their time and energy possible to achieving the best outcome and not have to worry about ancillary matters. We will continue to work with all our stakeholders on this. Thank you, Ms. Poh.